Alright, thank you everyone for making it tonight. My name is Daniel Sun. I'm one of the co-presidents of Project East St. Louis. Our group was founded in 2013 with our faculty advisor, Professor Jack Kirkland, as a community service group dedicated to engaging the East St. Louis community. Over time, we realized that despite being a group focused on East St. Louis, that we actually knew very little about East St. Louis. And after some follow-up research, it seems very few people knew about our neighbors about 15 minutes away. So we decided to interview the residents of East St. Louis and to ask them about their city, to understand their struggles, and to listen to their narratives. Thus, Voices of East St. Louis was born. Tonight is going to be a culmination of more than a year's work where we have the unique opportunity to hear about East St. Louis through unfiltered lenses. As part of that, we have invited people who work and live in East St. Louis to talk about the community they see here. These panelists and Professor Hammer. Each panelist will have 3 minutes, and fair warning to each of you, we will cut you off in the interest of time, to introduce themselves and to talk about East St. Louis. And afterwards, you guys will get to talk to each other for about 10 minutes to talk about what you've heard, to start a discussion amongst yourself. And then the rest of the time will be open to questions and answers. So let's get started. Samuel, do you want to?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Samuel Mwangi. Before I came to the United States a few years ago, I used to work in Africa, particularly in Democratic Republic of Congo, working with vulnerable communities. So when I came to Washington University, my desire was to continue working with low-income communities, and through the assistance of Jack here, Professor, I was a student, practicum student in East St. Louis for 2 semesters, and after that, I stayed. I got hired and I worked for Lessie Neighborhood House as the Director of Community and Economic Development. So our main focus is, from our department, is to strengthen capacity of the community residents so that they can be able to identify their issues that they are going through and be able to address those issues and get better outcomes for the children, youth, and residents. For now, I'll go straight to some questions that will be given to guide us. And the first question was about the most promising aspect of East St. Louis. And I would say, from my interaction, for the time I've been in East St. Louis now for about 2 years, East St. Louis has all it takes to be a great city. It has property, it has vacant lots, it has great geographical location with road networks. The train system is already in place, rivers. This is a great place, and I think it's a great promising place where all of those ideas together create a great situation for development. The greatest need for East St. Louis, and I'm sure our panelists will talk about different things, but for me, I've observed education is a great need. I talk to children every day, and I see one of our friends, Jamal, who we got to place after school program, and you talk to those young people from school and you wonder why they cannot be able to answer some of basic questions in math and turning time and those other aspects. And I think that's a great need we have in East St. Louis. When I compare to other places, including every place I travel, whether it's here in America or in Africa, I feel like children in East St. Louis, they are left behind in many aspects. And of course, the issues of business, we know years before, there were great businesses in East St. Louis, and they all went, as Professor Kirkland has been talking about. So getting businesses back, good education for the kids will be very vital. The future of East St. Louis, I think for me, the future is in the kids, the future is in the youth. These are the people who we can instill hope, optimism, because the older people, when I speak to many of them, they have seen it all. They are not as hopeful. But I think the youth, the children, we can instill hope and show that there is still a great future.
Samuel, Professor Kirkland?
You're really sharp over there with that clock. My name is Jack Kirkland. I am a professor here at Brown School. I've been here for a few years. And I have worked in East St. Louis for a very long time. You know, it's a very strange thing about how people conceive towns. even this university, when students come here from elsewhere and they want to know about the metro area, obviously anyone who comes into a place that's strange to them want to know about the metro area or wherever it is that they're in. And what they hear are words and they are said in such foreboding ways that they know that they're supposed to be afraid if they're not. And so East St. Louis is one of those phrases that students hear and they're told to be afraid. But the irony of all of that is that a young man came in my office about, maybe 2.5 years ago. And some of the people that are part of this program right now, you are familiar with. For instance, Daniel, who is doing the introducing of the panelists. And there's Amy back there swinging on the camera. Ilya back there, who is very much involved in all of this. But Alvin was the person who stepped out from among them all, and he came into my office, and he said to me, he said, we've been looking at the bios of the professors at this university, and you seem to be someone who's doing something, and we'd like very much to do that something with you. We don't want to be on a campus and have a total experience of just being on a place that's very much rained in with clipped lawns and the rest of it. We want to see the world. And I think that is what is important for those of you who are in the audience. Your life is going to be out there in the professions that you choose. And there's no way that you can possibly be a professional person if you don't understand how to interface and interact with people who are racially, culturally different. The irony of that is that the differences are the same, basically. When I first came to this university as the director of Black Studies, that was in the 70s. When I came here, it was probably less than a dozen black students on this whole campus. And so you know that things have changed, but you can have change without having progress. So don't get carried away with numbers.
Professor Kirkland, what else you like?
That's it?
Yeah. I wanted to ask some of the type of
I'm
questions.
just clearing my throat. Okay.
All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Jamal Sadrud-Din. I am from the south side of Chicago. I am a 3-2 student here at WashU, so I finished 3 years of undergrad, and now I'm doing 2 years of master's program in social work. I'm a first year MSW student. I'm doing my practicum at the East St. Louis School District 189, and so in that, they've given me a lot of range to do a lot of projects in the school district, and I really appreciate that. I'm doing some grant writing, doing some development work, facilitating meetings on each side of the line, which is a group that's trying to get some communication between the nonprofits in East St. Louis and make sure they're on the same page to producing the best outcome for students. And then I was also able to create my own project, and the project I created was poetry workshops in the classrooms. So I've gone through maybe 20 classrooms so far this semester, and done a poetry workshop with students getting interested in it. I've been doing slam poetry for about maybe 8 years now, and it's something I'm really passionate about, something I really enjoy sharing with students. And Samuel talked about the youth, and talked about what's one of the most promising things you see in East St. Louis, and for me it's definitely the people, and especially the youth, because I see really great things in them when I see them writing poetry, expressing themselves, being creative. And I'm also taking in a class with Professor Kirkland about East St. Louis, and I've been involved in the city with that as well. And being from the south side of Chicago, I see certain parallels, and I see certain stigmas being parallel as well. And I think that's one of the things that's interesting. You know, when I'm in the classroom and I tell my East St. Louis students that I'm from the south side of Chicago, they gasp. And so I think it shows how powerful stigmas can be, and I think we need to really try and start to change that.
Thank you.
Well, good evening. I'm Elizabeth Patton-Whiteside, and I am the Okay. I'm the Public Health Administrator of Eastside Health District. I'm the first African American female to hold this position. Eastside Health District was incorporated in 1937, so that's a long time to not have an African American administrator. My professional background is nursing, so I've been in the health arena for over, I'll tell you really how long, you guess how old I am, so over 35 years. I've been in the health profession. Now, I'm glad to be here to talk to you about East St. Louis and all the stigmas that's associated with East St. Louis that is totally negative. So when they ask what's the most promising aspect of East St. Louis, I would say it's the citizens. As he said, the youth. We are very proud individuals in East St. Louis. We're a close-knit family, and we really look after one another. But that is never portrayed in the newspaper. I don't know where they find these people to put on the news. I've never seen them before in my life. Okay. So, what do we need the most? We need mentors for our youngsters. You're a very good mentor, thank you. So that they can see hope and change instead of seeing and listening to all the negative things that are said about East St. Louis in the news. And what's the future of East St. Louis? East St. Louis is on the upswing. You know, it's that diamond in the rough. It sits there, we're sitting right on the river. That's commercial, that's money. All we need is more development, because when the industries left East St. Louis, they just left. They didn't have any type of exit strategy for the citizens. So they left all their toxic waste there. So we have to start all over again and rebuilding the city. And that takes a long, long time. And we have a lot of new interesting projects that's going on in East St. Louis now. But what should Washington youth students care about East St. Louis? It's because if you want to know the real world, we are the real world. You read about things in books for academia, but you have to be able to marry it with the real world. So what you learn academically and what you see in the real world, East St. Louis is a place where you can learn to put it all together.
Thank you. And so I will be introducing Professor Jennifer Hammer, who is on the Skype screen right there. She is a professor from the University of Kansas. We wanted to fly her in, but this is the best we can do. So she wrote a book called Abandoned in the Heartland. It's a really great book about East St. Louis. I think one of the things I really liked about it was, if you Google East St. Louis's history, it basically ends right around 1917 with the East St. Louis race riots. And from there till 2015, you can find almost nothing outside of demographics. So I highly recommend this book because she goes into a lot of different issues that East St. Louis faces today between like 1920s to the present day. So it's called Abandoned in the Heartland. We started some questions to answer, so I'll be just reading from that. And I'll try to read relatively quickly. What is the most promising aspect of East St. Louis? There are many promising aspects. It's a city with a rich and complex histories. And the history is an example of the complexities, contradictions, and multiple meanings of living in progress in the US Midwest. As a physical space, it offers considerable potential as a model city for very readily accessible industries, services, and amenities. It is situated on the Mississippi, across from St. Louis, and a gateway to both the East and the West. Its housing stock offers details of history and change, wealth, work, and labor, as small two-bedroom shotgun houses sit just blocks away from old mansions and around the corner from brick houses that house teachers, laborers, and shop owners. These are material elements. Its greatest strength is its population, or that which is most neglected. There are children here who laugh, play with toys, and who watch the same television shows as their neighbors in Edwardsville and Fairview Heights. These are young. These are the mom and dads who want their children to go to college, to travel, and to be healthy. These are seniors whose bodies are too tired to enjoy retirement, and whose budgets are insufficient to support the comfort of. It holds memories of many who became educators, researchers, entertainers, athletes, business CEOs, politicians, and more. East St. Louis's promise is that it is a city where people believe in their own promised potential, and especially that of their children. What do you think the community of East St. Louis needs the most? It needs for the state of Illinois and the nation to decide that people matter. By this, she means that citizens should hold policymakers and corporate leaders and themselves accountable for institutionalized poverty, inequitable educational experiences outcomes, disproportionate levels of poor health and suffering, and unreasonable rates of incarceration. What East St. Louis needs is not just about East St. Louis, but about humanity. What can students do in addition to calling attention to poor policy, tax codes, institutionalized problems, and problematic leadership? Discover the part of the project that fits your interest into which you are able to commit for 1 year or more if possible. There's one other question I want to get to that none of us are going to cover, that I wanted to cover. And this is, the question was, what are the limits of encroaching upon people's dignity and honest reporting / telling the truth? And she's not sure how she would answer this question, but she would like to approach it in this way. We would all be self-reflective before entering spaces with marginalized population. We should ask ourselves about our motivations. Why this community? Why do you think that we can make a difference? Are there other ways for me to contribute to the problem other than focusing on the people of East St. Louis? What about Belleville? Why not Granite City? In other words, start with your own background, interests, and motivations. Others will understand you, even if you do not. Be honest with those whom you engage. If you're only going to be around for a day or a week or semester, then make this clear. It is quite unfair and selfish to build a relationship and expectation only to move on after you have completed the task. Allow those with whom you engage to find a relationship with you and determine how much they do or do not want to share. So that's Professor Hammer for you guys. So with that, we'll have about 10 minutes. You guys can talk to each other about what you've heard, and then I'll call time, and you guys can ask Q&A. So Lena in the back has the microphone, so and you can ask the panelists anything you want. So feel free to talk to your neighbors. Go ahead. And you can direct your question to any of the panelists.
Hi. I have a question for all the panelists, and a few of you mentioned how East St. Louis is a prime spot for development and needs development at this point. But I feel like very often we hear the story of how development becomes gentrification. And so I'm just wondering if you guys can all talk more about that relationship and how strategically development can be planned so it doesn't risk alienating the residents that are currently living there.
Yes, there's no question about it that when you talk about development, the consequences very frequently is gentrification. And so what is happening to East St. Louis now is that it sees itself in the face of a great deal of development coming at it. You know, for instance, if you think about a forest fire that's coming at you, the only way that you can put it out is to send another forest fire towards it, and that allows the fire to run out of energy, oxygen, so forth and so on. And so the fire is out. And so I make that analogy to suggest that East St. Louis has to begin to develop, because if it doesn't develop, then what you just said will be the consequences. The most important thing to happen in an African American community is how can you do the entrepreneurial kinds of development, and to do it in such harmony and to do it in a way that allows all of the pieces to be a composite. And so that as those pieces become a composite, they are, the people who are those entrepreneurs are able to hire more and more people. And so the more that a community can begin to employ itself, because small businesses are the largest employers that there are in the country. When that actually starts to happen, then you're going to have an opportunity for a people to work together, to organize together, and to realize that their backs are up against the wall. And you heard it from a number of people up here, the most valuable land in the whole metro area is East St. Louis. They're built all around it. They played all kinds of games that they can play. They have, they now have the big decision of where they're going to put the new football field. And so that's at the last place on the waterfront that can be developed. They'll do anything that they can do not to put anything of value in the city of East St. Louis. I'm thinking that if the people really don't see the handwriting on the wall, I can predict in the next 7 years we will be looking at a white community. And the only way to stop that is to know your back is up against the wall. To know that you've got to do something because people are taking property every day. All you have to do is go to a surplus sale and you actually see the East St. Louis community for sale. So this is as serious as it can be. And we have to really lock in as a body, as a community. And if we don't make ourselves a solid and a composite group, then we're going to be in for a long and hard period of time. But just one last comment, and everybody in here knows that the cities are the places that people are going. The cities. And everybody knows that African Americans are being pushed out of cities. And so it's crucial to stand, to buy, to build, and to help one another so that this really can't happen. But I'm glad that you brought up the subject of gentrification because students, you guys are in a position to make noise, you're in a position to express concerns, and you're in a position to help by virtue of the knowledge that you have and the concern that you have about what's happening to people who really don't have a great deal of resources. So you're a lot of strength, and you're going to have to exercise it.
Thank you, Professor. Do any of the panelists want to add on to that? Yeah, that's pretty good. Any other questions?
Hi, I'm Alan. I'm an undergraduate here. I think if we're going to change the image of East St. Louis, especially in this community, it falls largely on the community members itself. But I think that if you talk to a lot of undergraduates, they often refer to statistics as the reason that they validate the reasoning that East St. Louis is so dangerous. And I think that a lot of them wouldn't go there at any cost. So what suggestions do you have to kind of disseminate this message without kind of like pushing back on statistics that exist and also like respecting, I guess, just disseminating the message to undergraduates?
Now, if I heard you, go ahead.
Professor? Professor Alvin?
Okay, I'm hearing the question.
So the question was, a lot of students refer to statistics as a way for not associated. How would you advise undergraduates to use those statistics?
I think those statistics are critical, and one of the things about statistics at data on East St. Louis and you see something that says 30% unemployment, which is really closer to 50% unemployment, if you consider those just completely giving up looking for work, that's telling you a story, and it's an important one. And it's not because people don't want to work, right? That's not the story. It's not because these people don't care about their kids, don't care about their families, don't care about their homes. That's not the story. The story is that this is a place that the world really stable and one, and the U.S. has decided to walk away from, right? There are people there that the majority feel are worth investing in. And that's pretty much how they see African Americans across the border. Think about what's going on in the news today, with Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, and all of these killings. This is about a population that's historically been marginalized, right? And so they're a population that people really don't have to care about. So I would say pay attention to those statistics because those statistics help you to tell that story. And that's the story of humanity.
Thank you, Professor.
Can I add to that? Let me just ask a question, rhetorical question. You don't have to put up your hand. How many of you are from a town of 100,000 people? Probably a lot of you from a town of 100,000 people. Any town, I want you to hear this, any town that has 100,000 people has a East St. Louis in it. It has 25,000 people, 27,000 people who are in that town, and it's East St. Louis. East St. Louis is, and what we're saying here is you're talking about people, and you're talking about people who are caring. You're talking about a town that has 100+ churches in it. You're talking about a town that is very committed and dedicated to its citizens. It's a town that is a family town. I mean, you go there and you can call a name, and somebody will know who that person is. So it's a very interesting community, East St. Louis. So if you're going to leave here from this university, and it's an awesome university, but you're going to leave here, you're going to go somewhere where you're going to have a challenge of working with people who have the same kinds of needs that the people in East St. Louis have. And if you go through an institution like this and you come out totally unequipped to meet that population, then you failed and have been failed as a student, because the world is growing in terms of tremendous need, and it has to have individuals who understand. And whatever profession that you're going to go in, because you go here to go into professions, you're going to have to know how to work with people who are racially, culturally, and ethnically different. And the best time and the best place to learn that is here and now.
Let me just add a little bit. I think we hear the bad about East St. Louis, but nobody talks about the good. We have a resident here who is planning to start doing a magazine called I Am East St. Louis, which will be talking about all the good things about East St. Louis. Charmaine is there. And why I'm saying this is because, for example, we have started an effort in East St. Louis where all the grade 3 children will be teamed up with mentors every Saturday. For the next 6 Saturdays, they'll be meeting in churches and different other places to help them, prepare them for the exams for grade 3 so that they can all qualify. And nobody will be talking about it. Nobody talks about those things. Nobody talks about all the volunteers in after-school programs and all the good things that are going on in East St. Louis. So we need a voice like this. We need people like Jamal and others to start talking about the good happening in East St. Louis so that the image can eventually start to change.
I'll add one last little thing. In organizing undergraduate students, especially at WashU, I've noticed, being a former undergrad student, it's really hard sometimes because you can tell someone something, or you can put a tweet out, or you could make an announcement at a student group meeting, but it's hard to get students to come out to things that they're not familiar with, and especially if it's something that they perceive as dangerous. it's really hard. So I think you don't want to look at a way to like disseminate information because that's kind of the easier thing to do. So you want to make one-on-one connection. You want to say, hey, I know you're interested in education. We have some after-school programs where you can work directly with the population of children or youth that you really want to work with. And I can connect you with this person. You can come out with us. We'll drive you. You have to meet people where they are, and that's very important. So if I knew someone who was really interested in poetry, I'd say, hey, come with me to one of these poetry workshops and see the students. So I think we want to turn from like trying to disseminate information. Besides, like I think we do want to like announce the wins, like the wins, the positive things that are going on. We want to announce that. We want to make sure that that's known. But if you really want people to come out, if you really want people to get involved, you have to find what connects with them and then meet them halfway and really bring them out.
And then you have to realize that a lot of the statistics that you see, who wrote the statistics and why? What's the reason behind it? Now I'm from East St. Louis, born, raised there, and we feel that a lot of the statistics and the negative stuff is put out there for everyone to fear East St. Louis. You never hear the good stuff, as everyone has said. So what happens? You buy into the hype. You move away. There are more Caucasians living in East St. Louis now than you think. Okay? And it can't be that bad if during the day they're all there. They're walking the streets. They're not being harassed or anything. And I'm like, where did she come from? Where did he come from? Oh, they live down the street from me. Every time I go and have some repair done on my house, the first thing they want to know is, do you want to sell? I want to buy your house. No. So it's a game. It's a game of racism as far as I'm concerned. To take what we've already said is some of the most valuable property on the Illinois River, take it back and rebuild. You've got projects going on over there on the riverfront where they're rebuilding the riverfront on the Illinois side. You've got other projects going on in the city, but you never hear about it. All you hear about is negative stuff and the media. I don't know where they're getting people from either.
Let's have one more comment and then move on.
I want to make a short commercial here. And that is that this summer I'm going to be teaching a class, and it's an immersion class, and it will be 15 students who will be living in East St. Louis for a week. I will be with them. We will be there for a week, and they are going to have the opportunity to learn how to be helpful, how to do things in communities where people are working as hard as they can, struggling, and need help. But the fact is that these young people coming and living and working in East St. Louis are going to know how to do these things in other communities. Because as I said, you show me any town that has 100,000 people, it's got an East St. Louis.
Next question? Somebody in the front that... No? All right, if not...
Good evening, and thank you. I appreciate this panel tonight. I wanted to ask, what is your feelings on the parallels between Ferguson, what's happening in the suburbs here in St. Louis, and what happened in St. Louis in the 60s? I think like Professor Emma, her book, I read her book, and when that percentage of black population goes over 51, it's like, they lose all the money that comes in from the state. People just seem to give up on it. Is that going to happen in Ferguson? Or is there something, we're talking about St. Louis solving St. Louis problem, and that helps all these other future problems?
I think the thing that's going to happen in Ferguson is unfortunate because being a member of the civil rights movement myself, I know that it's very possible to get attention. And as you get attention, the question is, what's the solution? And the solution typically given us is service. To give people service and not to help them to build. Because if you don't have an economic base, you don't have a chance. And the whole notion of how to bring that economy and that economics together is what many of us need to know how to do and cooperate in doing it. Our problem is that when we try to do things individually, yes, there can be some individual progress, but it doesn't bring up the mass. You know, you have to bring the mass with you, which means that you have to have a lot of people knitted into economic development, and so that people can see that they have something not only in common, but they have something to preserve. So I think that Ferguson literally represents the epicenter of cities like that across America. You know, and I've said that it's kind of like the magma, you know, the stuff that makes lava. It's all over the place, and one of the mountain tips just happened to be Ferguson. It could happen anywhere in America because the situation is just the same. And if you look at the economy, you look at prices going up, you see work going out of the country or down or whatever, and you see poverty. And it's not something that is exclusively black. You know, poverty doesn't care, you know, what the pigmentation is. That's what we're heading into. And so I would hope that Ferguson is smart enough not to get caught into the trap of believing that if someone comes with services, it'll make a big difference. It will for a short while, and after that, people will be worse off than they were.
You go to the panelists right now. Okay, then more questions. I think Helen has another one. Yeah.
Alan.
In other words, so what happens is you have an East St. Louis, which is predominantly a black community, and have these statistics that emphasize the negative aspects of East St. Louis, right? And the reason it's so easy for the media to pick up those negative statistics and to run with those negative statistics is because you have a population that really wants to believe that there's a problem with East St. Louis and the people in East St. Louis, right? Not so much the city itself, but the people, right? And that's historical, right? We can go all the way back to this period of slavery when the white population had to justify slavery. How do you justify slavery, right? You make the problem with the people themselves, right? How do you justify poverty? You blame the people for their own poverty, right? Why do you need to stay out of East St. Louis? Because they're black people are dangerous, right? Those are all very, very old stereotypes, and so that's how the statistics are used. And the only way to counter that, I think, as the other panelists are saying, is to focus on what's really going on in East St. Louis. Focus on the families, focus on the schools, right? Focus on the parks, focus on the things that people are trying to do. People in the city are doing. When I said take a look at the statistics and use them to your advantage, people need to understand that families, moms, dads, grandparents are trying to do all they do, right, in the context of those statistics, in the context of that stark poverty, right, in the context of incredibly high taxes, right. That's what people need to understand. And the thing of it is, I think I 60s, 70s, and 80s, you see industry begin to lead those cities. They really pack up and lead, and East St. Louis is one of the first places that industries pack up and go. When industries lead, what they do is they take their taxes with them, right? It's corporate taxes that help to pay for streets, help to pay for schools, help to pay for street lights and stop signs. Those taxes go. When those taxes go, then what you have is a city that is really crumbling, right? There's very little money to invest in the city, so cities have to come up with other ways to make money. That's what you see in Ferguson, right? In terms of the wars, they're trying to find ways to make money. And so in many ways, Ferguson is very much like East St. Louis. We have a lot of people who don't own their homes there, they rent, right? It's more and more black, where it used to be predominantly white, right? It's the same story. The reason that black people can live there now is because white people have moved out and the property is not as much value, right? So it's more affordable for black people. It's the same thing that happened in East St. Louis. But it's not just happening in Ferguson, and it's not just happening in predominantly black communities, though it is disproportionately happening there. It's happening in working communities, where you see working class families. That's where it's happening. Where you see this disinvestment in families, disinvestment in workers, right? So much so that workers don't even get a living wage. You can work 40 hours a week and you still cannot support your family, right? So that's in East St. Louis is really a precursor, right, to what you see now beginning to happen to other cities in the metropolitan area, right? Cities that can no longer afford to maintain their populations, right? Because corporations have packed up and moved away. When they packed up and moved away from East St. Louis, they moved to the southwest. They moved to the suburbs so that they didn't have to pay high taxes. Once you get to the 70s and the 80s, they're leaving the United States. The 90s, right? 2000s. Where do we see corporations moving now, right? They're leaving the United States. What they're leaving is people without jobs. They're leaving communities without tax dollars. So I think that's the parallel. And you really you can look just about anywhere in the Midwest, as well as other regions, and you'll find that parallel. That's a really good question.
Thank you, Pastor. So right now it's 8 o'clock, so let's just do one last question. If anybody wants to go ahead.
Okay, I was wondering if you guys could speak on what local government looks like in East St. Louis and what the power structure how the power structure currently works, and also how your respective nonprofits interact with that power structure.
Oh, that's a good question, because it's in the news every day. But as far as the political structure, the government in East St. Louis is a council-run government. It's not a mayoral-run government. The mayor is, of course, the figurehead of the city, but the city is really run by the council. And most people don't know that. And as far as Eastside Health District is a non-profit governmental agency. We're not under the auspices of East St. Louis government, even though we interact with them every day. So my problems come from Springfield more than they come from City Hall.
I think I'm still learning a little bit more about local government, but the way my nonprofit, or the way the East St. Louis School District interacts with the government is that the way that most school districts get their funds is from property taxes, and in East St. Louis, property values are very low, and so it's not a solid revenue stream. So a lot of what we do, or what I do, is I work under the head grant writer. We write a lot of grants for the school, and I think it's really important. And I think also the pathways work that we're doing with the United Way, with other organizations to make sure that these outcomes for students are the best, has been vital. And without that, I think the school district wouldn't be able to do a lot of the things that it does. And ultimately, relying on grant funds and relying on nonprofits like the United Way isn't a sustainable thing. So hopefully, I know that St. Louis is a city that is on the upswing. Hopefully that upswing comes soon, because it's definitely not a sustainable way to rely on grants and rely on nonprofits to really make sure the school system is working well. But I really do see a lot of positive things principals in, there's new superintendents, and there's new programs. There's actually a 9th grade center, like separated from the high school, which is actually really cool, and I really think that's a very positive thing, because the 9th graders really need that special attention when they go into high school, and it helps their transition, it helps them really like get to know themselves as a class as they move through high school.
I would say about the agencies, most of our agencies and the agency I work for, most of our dollars come from the states. We are funded by the Department of Human Services and other departments. What bothers me sometimes is that, and especially when there are budget cuts, like now they are cutting quite a good part of the budget, you are forced to have lobbyists who go and speak on your behalf. And you have to kind of be politically correct to be able to be in the system. And that is, of course, disturbing, because you would expect that your outcomes are the ones that speak for you, you know, that the governor and his team will see what you're doing and then give you money appropriately. But now you need to hire a lobbyist to go and speak for you, and you have to pay them. And if they are well connected, then you get the dollars. So it's a bit disturbing, and this is not about St. Louis, but about Illinois in general. And I guess, you know, Illinois is quite a corrupt government, and so is St. Louis and the greater St. Louis, unfortunately.
I think that the thing that I'd like to say as a final comment is that the evidence that students are helpful and are safe and feel very comfortable in East St. Louis is really you guys who put a lot of fair. I worked with you easily 2 years, and I can remember you guys coming and asking me, what can you do? And you actually put together a program of working with the young people in the high school. Actually, you took on a 9th grade project, and in that project, you brought the students in the school district, many of those students, to Washington University. And those students actually had the opportunity to sit in front of the admissions and to be addressed as though they were coming to the university. And on other occasions, parents came with these young people. So the question of East St. Louis and what is the character of it, you certainly did not feel unsafe coming. And not only that, but you increased the numbers of people who are working with you, who are coming and being involved in East St. Louis. And I think that, you know, that says that students do not listen to the propaganda. The students want to find out and see for themselves what's true and what's real. And the only way that you can find out about people is to be among them, and as my immersion project will be, is to live among them, and to see how you can be helpful. And I see that's a very, very important piece and aspect of the involvement that you and Amy and Dia are accomplishing. So I like to give heads up and hats off to you.
President Emmer, do you have anything you want to add?
I didn't really hear the question. If it's about volunteering or contributing to East St. Louis, I think I may have touched on that in the introduction that you read. I think I would ask students to ask themselves why they feel like they want to go into East St. Louis. I mean, you know, the thing of it is, especially if you're a student who's from the majority population, right? You're now at first generation. You haven't had issues with being a part of the marginal population. I think you have to really be self-reflective and ask yourself why East St. Louis. And then before that, why
So let's thank the panelists for I also want to thank the people who helped put this together. So especially Professor Jack Kirkland for being our sponsor for Project East St. Louis for the last couple of years. I want to thank the Olin Library for providing the electronic equipment, the Doc Gephardt, and the other event organizers for helping us have this space and for having this event tonight, and any other members of Project East St. Louis who helped put it together. So at this point, we're going to move it into a sort of like open area. You guys are free to browse the easels. There's a lot of good food in the back. We also have laptops up of Voices of East St. Louis where we interviewed the residents, and I'll be showing some of them on this screen here so you guys can watch. But at this point, it's like open. You guys can walk around and mingle with each other. And we'll be around until 9 p.m. So thank you guys for attending.